All right, man. We are live right here for the Truth Be Told show. And it is yours truly, Mr. Just As Joe, as well as our other brother from another mother and other host, Marcus D. Ray. And I like that shirt you got going on, man. What is that?
This is one of my fraternity brothers. He's got a line out. It's called Black a Male and Black a Female, and it's an educational program that he's designed. Um, and so this is what you see here is the thing where you see around Superman, but you got the colors from the African flag, and he's got this term Black a Male or Black a Female. That's about empowering our race to be uh, beyond more educational and more thought provoking type stuff. And so he's been working on it for quite a while. And he gave me this shirt as just a brother to wear to help get his brand out.
Gotcha. Got you. Okay, I was looking at my shirt to see what mine said. since yours said something, said mine's is "Boys in the Hood," and it says it ain't no fairy tale.
I know that's right. As
Yeah,
I go through this, I'm always excited to be here and trying to make sure that we bring some valuable and important content and messages uh, to the public. And so I always look forward to being here.
absolutely. So hey, let's go ahead and get it started, get it going, folks. It is July 28th, 2022, and right now it is the Truth Be Told show. Let's get it.
All right, cue the music.
Cue music.
Start the music.
Starting music.
And go.
It's the Truth Be Told show, where we place America first. Honoring those who America has forgotten. Listen in and unlearn to relearn. As we set the record straight. And now, your host of the Truth Be Told show, Mr. Just Ask Joe and Uncle Nishorn.
All right. What's going on? It's June 28th, 2022, folks. This is the only June 28th, 2022 you will ever get. So make sure it is a great day. Absolutely. So, man, we got a few things on the agenda here. I got my partner Marcus D. Ray with me, and trying to bring you guys some important stuff to talk about. And as we open up here, one of the things that we're looking at is, let's see, uh, current events. Yes for life, constitutional amendment. Hey, the title of the show today, folks, is there life after Roe v. Wade, or is there life after Roe versus Wade? And this is this is good stuff. So I tell you, we tried to play on words with that as we talked about that. So it's interesting. And yeah,
I
I tell you what. I tell you what, I'm gonna start the show this way. I'm going to play a video from this past Saturday. Okay, and this was on the Tipping Point show, and my partner, brother John Yah, he said something. He made some great comments, made some great points about the show, and I think it's important enough to play it. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of bring that in and let you guys hear it. But any thoughts that you have as we go into this?
Well, you know, the underlying part of Roe v. Wade is what never gets talked about. And so I think it's important that let's hear what John's got to say. But I think that there's more to it than just women's right to choose. And
Absolutely,
I think
absolutely.
what's not being discussed on the as Paul Harvey would say, the rest of the story.
Yeah. Okay, so let's go ahead and listen to this. And he made, like I said, he made some great points. And let's see what we're talking about here.
Touch on a little bit about what's happening this week with Roe versus Wade.
Ooh, now that's a touchy subject. So you use words when you say touch on it.
I know, and so what people need to understand that this what happened every 4 years, at least probably every time a new president comes in and he sets up a new Supreme Court or appoints a new Supreme Court member, whether it is Democrat or conservative or Republican. What happens is that there's going to be always a challenge to the present law. And this is why the Roe versus Wade always pop up every 4 years. So I think now they set it to where they allow each state to decide whether or not will abortion be illegal. And some of the states, like Kentucky, which is a conservative Republican state, most of them will say no, will make people end up having to cross state lines if they want to get an abortion. And there's two folds to this subject here that everyone is concerned about. I noticed that people on one end who are concerned where every life has a right to live. I agree with that, and definitely pro-life good, right? But then there's another case where someone says, well, who's going to take care of all these kids that you're pumping out there? And that's the other issue. The other issue is whether or not should a woman have a right to choose her body, her mind, her choice, right? Whether or not should she have a child or not, or abort this child. Now, to the other side, those who are pro-abortion, there is something sinister behind that whole ideal, first of all. And there's two folds to it. Yes, if a woman is raped, she should be allowed to get an abortion. So let's move the rape part out the way. But let's look at just responsibility and accountability of somebody being accountable enough to have sex. Okay, so you got now sex toys, we got sex on television, sex in the music, we got now teaching children at a very early age of sex, right? So all this sex, we got sex pills now in just regular stores. So all this talk about sex. Okay, have all the free sex you want, that's fine. And so you can now have sex without any accountability. Why? Because if you get pregnant, there's an abortion clinic right up the street, so you can dump that baby at. The problem is that the cynical part behind it is that these babies are being chopped up and used as medicines to pharmaceutical companies. A lot of people don't know that, and a lot of people are unaware of that attachment. So instead of wearing a condom, instead of having some type of sense of sustaining from sex until you get married or until you are actually ready to have a baby, because really sex is about reproduction. It really ain't about just fucking and having fun, right? But we use it in that sense because why we're poor, and the poorest people have the most sex, and this is the concern. This is why China says you can only have 2 kids and your ass better be married. So there's no standards here in this country when it comes to sex. Now, yes, a woman should have a choice to choose, but she should first also have a mindset to where she's responsible for what she's about to do when she lays down. Same for a brother. You're going to stick your penis in some woman without a condom. Know that is a factual that you can get that woman pregnant. And another issue, I don't know where men get this idea from. Women got it too, where a man can pull out while he's having sex. He's automatically ejaculating sperm in you before he actually ejaculates. I don't know if people actually know that. So people are maybe getting pregnant on an accident and saying, oh, I don't want this, I'm gonna dump it. And that goes back to the responsibility. So when we talk about Roe versus Wade, I don't care what either side you're talking on or what points you're talking about. Somehow no one talks about accountability. If your ass lay down and have sex, you should be responsible for what you are producing. And that's just period, right? You don't want that responsibility. Fucking stop having sex. Just that simple.
Stop having sex, but it feels so good. You know, and that's the response, man. It's like where we fall to that animalistic mentality to where we can't not do it. You know, I mean, and here's the thing: when you look at
All right.
So as we look at that, then what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think John makes some good points when we talk about accountability and responsibility. Those things should always be a factor in who you decide to lay down with. But to say that it's a singular choice or that you have no choice, I think is just a little bit too far. Now, you took rape out of it and incest and some of those things, and I don't think many people would argue that, besides maybe the governor of North Dakota or South Dakota. But
those interesting to find out that he's got a long string of rape history.
She found
that out.
Well, when you say there's no reason for additional trauma, so in her case, Governor Nome, I think was her name, she said there's no use in creating further trauma. So she the person already had the trauma of being raped, and now there's additional trauma of having an abortion. And so she's saying that she won't even agree to it under those circumstances. And so, as I see it, how Roe versus Wade, the Republican Party has been chasing the car for a long time, and now they finally caught it. I don't think they really wanted to catch the car because it was great talking points. It was a great divisive issue that allowed them a point to make and keep division going. So now they've caught that car. What do they do next? And so Justice Thomas has already laid some of that out for you. And that's where I think the real problem is their life after Roe versus Wade. That's yet to be determined. And if you look at Justice Thomas's opinion, there's not going to be much life left. And so that's why I said it's way beyond, or it's more than just Roe versus Wade that's at stake here when you think about it like that.
So what do you think about the idea of aborted fetus being used by pharmaceutical companies for testing and things of that nature?
Well, see, I think the people get emotional about that. No one complains when a cadaver is used in medical school, and if a person leaves their body to science and they get used for medical practices, no one says, "Oh, we can't do that," because that's just not right. And so, as a fetus is terminated, then what is the difference between that and using somebody for furthering medical science? And so we draw these distinctions because it's an emotional thing, or they try to make it emotional.
But then wouldn't that make it seem like there would be a push for abortion then? That there would be somewhat of an agenda out there to push for abortion in order for pharmaceutical companies to have plenty more to test on.
Well, but that's like a what's the word I'm looking? That's taking a thing and extending it beyond its logical conclusion to say, I don't know how many abortions take place, but to hear them tell it, I read one article that they claim 63 million abortions take place a year, which cannot be anywhere near correct. But there's plenty of opportunity, because abortions are taking place, that they would not need to manufacture them in order to conduct their continued research. Just like when a cadaver gets left for medical to medical science, people are dying every day. So there's no need to go out and kill people. So we have these available for medical science.
Mm.
And so that's just a misdirection, and it's tied to emotion. You know, people say, "Oh, this is an innocent life, and all lives matter." But that same person, before they get the breath out, will throw the switch on somebody in the electric chair, the death or gas chamber. And so all life doesn't really matter, just the ones that they think matter. And they try to qualify that by saying innocent life.
Exactly. Well, I mean, you're talking kind of, in a sense, to me, apples and oranges, when you start talking about, electric chair versus, we're talking about criminals and things of that nature.
I agree with you. But what I'm saying is that you can't say in one breath that all life matters and then qualify it by saying that's an innocent life, as if it's okay to kill someone that's not innocent and that life doesn't matter.
Well, I mean, you're talking about an innocent life that didn't even get a chance to have a trial. I mean, what if the babies had a chance to have a trial? Maybe that's the thing. Maybe there needs to be a court proceeding before the fact, so that we can, a lawyer for the baby and a lawyer for the mother, defendant for the mother, or what have you,
And that's coming based on some of the way these laws are written. That's coming because the what they call them, the originalists, the people that are originalists to the Constitution. See, there's only one thing in there that says, was there a quickening? And they ask that about a baby, and the quickening meaning that first kick. Or did you feel the baby moving? At any point prior to that, then you could have terminated the pregnancy. And that's all the Constitution really ever makes mention of, or in some of the documents supporting the Constitution, right? And so as we look at someone's interpretation of that, the way these laws are written, that's exactly where we're headed. Because you now can charge me with murder, the way some of them are written, because the baby was aborted. And then you could find yourself with trials for that very thing. But in all honesty, it'll go away here pretty quick, because now the dog has caught the car, and they don't know what to do now. Talking about the Republican Party.
The dog has caught the car. Awesome.
Yeah, dogs chase cars, they never catch them, man. That was the Republican Party chasing.
They chase bicycles too. Sometimes they even chase their own tail. But here, real quick, we're gonna go to commercial, and when we come back, got a special guest joining us, Brother Martin Smith, who is joining us in the conversation, and we'll be right back right here on the Truth Be Told show.
Thank you, Truth Be Told, for allowing God's Lives Matter to be a sponsor. Wearable products, as the purple t-shirt, is bearing witness every life created by God has infinite value. Visit God'sLivesMatter.com.
Habibi Trading Company, home of soap, sticks, and Saya Baba products. Over 400 locations at a store near you. Cincinnati, Ohio, Louisville and Lexington, Kentucky, Southern Indiana, or find yours online at SayaBaba.com. Again, that's SayaBaba.com. Habibi Trading Company, where you can find fragrances to incite your senses.
HealthDaddyWow.net. 100% plant-based herbs and supplements. Whether you're in person or online, use the word tipping for 10% off. Remember, feel better, look great, HealthDaddyWow.net. Remember, HealthDaddyWow.net.
All right, cue the music.
Cue music.
Start the music.
Starting music.
And go.
It's the Truth Be Told show, where we place America first. Honoring those who America has forgotten. Listen in and unlearn to relearn. As we set the record straight. And now, your host of the Truth Be Told show, Mr. Just Ask Joe and Uncle Mishorn.
All right. We're back, folks. It is the Truth Be Told show, and it's yours truly, Mr. Just Ask Joe. We also have Brother Marcus D. Ray, and to the stage here we also have Brother Martin Smith here. Welcome. Are you there, sir? How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking, and I appreciate you inviting me to be on today.
Absolutely. A bit impromptu, but it's all about truth here at the Truth Be Told show, and want to bring some others. We all are on a text thread with each other, and always seem to have some very interesting conversations, and it's something that I've said before that, hey, you guys need to come on the show and talk about this. You and Marcus seem to have the most interesting of the interesting conversations, so I figured it would be great to have you on. So we're talking Roe versus Wade. And, we played a little segment from Saturday's The Tipping Point show. John Yah had some really good points that he made about Roe versus Wade. And, as we're moving along here, we're getting into the idea that the ADOS make up 38% of abortions statistically. And that's not to not bring to light the fact that in America, what is called white, it makes up about 33%. So with that in mind, there's the other side that is a push about the fact that people of Caucasoid persuasion are not having as many kids anymore. But no one's thinking about the fact that part of that could be the fact that they're standing and lining up at the abortion clinic, just the same, almost neck and neck, 33% versus 38% here in America. So, as we move into this part of the conversation, then, what's your thoughts, Martin Smith? You're an advocate for ADOS. You actually are of I believe Indian descent, and that's feather, not red dot. So with that in mind, then how does you and your community think about abortion here in America?
Yeah, thank you for asking that. I'm Apache, and I got Cherokee on my mother's side, and my dad's side. I was a person that could have been easily aborted. My mother, my father, my dad hadn't had any children, but my mother had children. And my dad and her was together for 3 times. Could have been easily the choice made, me to be aborted. So, because they had other interests, my dad was 18 at the time. It's a topic for me that puts me kind of in the headlines myself. I could see it. And but my dad, he took me from my and left the state, but couldn't follow. And didn't have the means of fighting in court of the state. And so he taught me the value of being more of my own life.
Hey, Martin, excuse me, I'm having trouble hearing you. It's like I'm getting every other word.
Yeah, it's cutting in and out just a little bit. I don't know if it's a Wi-Fi thing or not.
It might be. Let me go to a different space. How's that? Is that any better? I'll go to my art.
It's a little better.
Yeah, a little better. Yeah. So just I would say just watch wherever where you talk into the phone, wherever that is, as long as your finger's not covering it or something like that. But here's an interesting comment right here. From what I've seen, heard, and read, Christians have been preparing for this day for decades. They will likely keep doing what they have been doing: support centers, education, etc. And that is what I am hearing at the moment. So that's Ambrose Lee right there. And I mean, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? What do you think, Marcus?
Well, I mean, I'm sure they're going to keep, when he says Christians are going to keep doing the same thing, it's a good thing that they want to educate people about sex or not sex, but sex education and how they protect themselves from STDs and stuff like that. So it's a good thing in that perspective, absolutely, that they continue doing that.
So, I mean, we still got sex ed in schools, right?
As far as I know, it's been a long time since I had a student in school, but as far as I know, they do.
So is it quite obvious to us that sex education classes aren't working? I mean, wouldn't the purpose be to educate people so that they don't go out and do stupid things like have babies that they can't afford? Have babies before they are in a solid, concrete relationship with someone that they know they want to be with for years to come, so that this baby doesn't potentially end up. There's a less likelihood of having a fatherless child be the case when someone is in some type of solid, concrete relationship before they decide to even have kids. And notice I said decide to have kids.
Well, I guess if you eliminated divorce and you couldn't no longer divorce, then yeah.
Well, I mean, no, because even with being in a marriage, the thing about being in a marriage is that it's not easy to just snap your fingers and divorce this other person. There's a whole lot that goes into it: house, cars, money, division. So the idea behind that, which would be the idea of being married before having sex, is the fact that it is a little difficult to get divorced. Maybe you'll think twice. Maybe you'll make a decision to say, let me dive back in my marriage and try to make that work, rather than just snap my fingers and walk off. Because if it was that easy to snap your fingers and walk off, then hey, I that would be a problem in and of itself. But because it isn't that easy, then I think that's why it said, hey, let's focus on getting married first, and then let's have sex. What were you gonna say, Martin?
No, I don't disagree with that. I'm just saying that when you divorce, you're in the same spot. And so in Kentucky, the divorce is no fault. And so essentially, unless we disagree over property, I can walk away.
Essentially, but it still takes time and money. Martin, what was your thoughts?
My thoughts are on it is, I don't think sex education is family. Can you not hear me?
Yeah. It's just we still getting kind of a choppy speech there.
Let me get my headpiece.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. We'll be here. So, here's a comment from Joseph Reeves Sr. Does it get viewed the same outside of the Bible Belt as it does inside of the Bible Belt? And I mean, I would say no, because for obvious reasons there. It doesn't get viewed the same. The Bible Belt is an interesting, part of the country in general, because you can find plenty of sinister things like this beaver standing up, or this groundhog standing up outside my office here. You can find plenty of sinister things within the Bible Belt, just as much as you can find anywhere else, but the facade of sanctity is there. So, when we get into this, then is there life after Roe versus Wade? This seems to be something that we prance around for years. When was the last time that this was? Do you know, Marcus? The last time when did this Roe versus Wade come into play in the first place, or the last time it was overturned or anything?
Are you talking about it? Well, there's been cases that's gone to the Supreme Court constantly in an attempt to overturn it. So that's been going on.
It has been in play for what, 10 years, 20 years now?
Oh, you're talking about the decision itself?
Yeah, without it being overturned.
Oh no, that's been as late as late mid 70s, maybe 73. I think is when the Roe v. Wade decision was made. I believe.
Okay, 49 years since the ruling, yeah. But so it hasn't been overturned or anything in the last 50 years.
Right. Now they've chipped away at it, a little bit here and a little bit there, but they would never actually overturn it. Right.
Gotcha.
So if you look at what Chief Justice Roberts said, that he didn't think they would go that far in the opinion as to gut the entire thing, basically overturn it. That they could have narrowly defined it to leave it in place at 15 weeks. Right. And so there's been attempts, but never like this to the gutting. And I don't know why he would be surprised, right? They did the same thing to the Voting Rights Act, which has been under attack ever since the day it was passed, or the day after.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Here, let's take a clip here, and this is, and now, are you talking about what Chief Justice Roberts said about a leak of a draft opinion on Roe versus Wade? No, absolutely appalling, something like that?
No, talking about his once the final opinion came out, he wrote that he didn't think they would go that far in what they did as far as overturning it. He thought they would narrowly define it, which would have left it at 15 weeks. But the way it was written, it overturned it completely.
So he disagreed with overturning Roe v. Wade.
Essentially, that's what he said. He didn't think it would go that far. And so the 15 weeks was at 3 months, right? Or a little bit over 3 months. So that's, I guess, where he drew the line for itself. But of course, overturning it completely allowed it to be shut down, because most states had already passed laws to be triggered by this decision. I think most states anyway.
Yeah, this is, again, it's a touchy subject. I mean, a woman is who brought it to the table, and then a woman is who has helped overturn it. But El Patah says, talk about how Woe lied about being raped by a black man that started the whole thing. I guess he's saying Roe. Right?
Yeah, it's probably Roe.
Yeah. So talk about how Roe lied about being raped by a black man that started the whole thing in the 70s. And we talk about this from time to time, to where if it is something that seems to affect the European majority, then that's when something is done. So, the lady Roe, it was about her being raped 49 years ago. in the 70s, and that's how we got this decision nonetheless, right?
Yeah, that's what they would have us believe. That might have been what they used to do in front of the court.
Well, I mean, yeah, I mean that was part of why this came to the table. Have you ever heard about that, Martin? That Roe lied about being raped by a black man, and which is what started this whole thing.
You know, I'm not. I hope you can hear me better now, Marcus. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Perfect.
Yep,
all right.
okay.
Excellent.
Yep.
All right. Thanks. You know, I don't know about the case as far as why it was brought. You know, what her specific experience was and what that was. I don't know. I haven't heard that. But I do want to address what I was trying to say earlier about sex education failing us. You know, Marcus, or you asked that question, moderator, and I say sex education has, you know, been a Band-Aid over the family education that doesn't exist in this space, where a lot of these decisions to have an abortion come from, you know, not having, like my dad, I was telling you earlier, instilled in me how important it was to be a man and stand up and take care of what's yours. I mean, he's 18 years old and, you know, in a bad situation, and he still took me and gave me a great life, Could have easily said, hey, it's your choice, and I wouldn't be here today, you know? And so he had given me another sort of lesson. But going back to the court's decision, from what the best that I can understand from it is that the higher court said that they had jurisdiction over the matter because the lower courts in the states had jurisdiction because you were represented. The thing about the federal, people don't really understand about government, is the federal government isn't bigger than the state government. It doesn't have more sovereignty than the state government. And the state government doesn't have more sovereignty than the county government. And the county government definitely doesn't have more sovereignty than over the individual. And what the courts were saying at the highest levels was they didn't have that authority. And that authority goes back to where you live. And a generation, what if a generation is born, information's given out, and says, hey, you know, abortion could have really affected the change of the world, and a generation says we're no longer going to abort babies. That would be their right? And so that's kind of what the court's saying. The court's saying instead of us being hovering over you as this great big mothership who has no real authority over the decision, the actual decision comes down to the sovereignty of the individual. You know, I heard Marcus say, well, somebody could accuse me of murder. Well, the sovereignty of the individual in that space, and maybe the dad already does consider it murder. Maybe the mother-in-law considers it murder. Maybe the siblings consider it murder. But I don't think the courts have jurisdiction to do that, because they would have to prove sovereignty over a dominion, or it would have to have authority over your decision to do that. And that's what the courts, from my opinion, is saying, is they don't have that authority. And so they give that back to the individuals who are in each state. The state doesn't have authority over the individual. The county, you could go to your county right now and say, look, we are for abortion in our county, and we are going to elect people who are going to represent us in our district as people who want abortion. And you could bring about a change in the state today by having that authority, that sovereignty over the courts. What the court's saying is you have sovereignty as the voter over them, and they're giving you back your sovereignty.
But that's misleading in how you say that. You see, that's very misleading.
All right, let's hear it.
If I had individual sovereignty, then the choice would be mine to make.
It is.
So, well, so what you did was to play on the words there and say, I can go vote someone who will make that happen for me. And if I have individual sovereignty, then I'll be able to walk down the street and exercise my right as I see fit.
Yes, sir. This is true.
Well, but what you just described is not what's happening. They turned it back over to the state. They didn't turn it back over to me, the individual.
You are the individual. You are the state. That's the point.
No.
You are the state. You're not Oklahoma. In the federal courts, you're not Oklahoma. I'm Kentucky.
But I'm also not Kentucky. You see,
you are if you're a Kentucky registered voter.
Well, no. You said individual sovereignty.
Yes.
So when you say individual sovereignty, you're talking about me being able to do what I want to do with myself. And if I don't like that, then I need to go vote for someone who feels the way I do.
No, you need to go find a bunch of voters who feel the way you do, because you ain't changing nothing as an individual sovereignty over the state, over the county, over the feds. You have got to get like-minded people to agree with you and assemble around those like-minded people.
Which is my
like in California, right? You're not going to worry about getting an abortion in California.
No.
You're not going to worry about getting an abortion in Indiana. So they've got their sovereignty, and they fought for their sovereignty, and they have their sovereignty rights.
That I have the individual right to do as I please. I have the state doesn't have sovereignty over the county, which is incorrect. Right?
No, the state does not have sovereignty over the county.
So in Kentucky,
a county judge is the most powerful person in the county.
In the county.
And the state. He has sovereignty over his borders, which the state doesn't.
Okay. So when they enact the law in Kentucky, if I don't want to, I have to if I'm the county judge.
If you're the county judge and your constituents come to you and say, we all believe in abortion, and we all live in this, and we're going to exercise our right to represent the fact that we are for abortion, and you have the ability as a whole county. Now, county is a big voting block. I mean, that when you go up to the state legislature and you bring a county resolution that says we are doing this in our county, we support this in our county. That is, I've run resolutions. I've run county resolutions on cannabis. I've run them on hemp. I've run county resolutions. When I get a whole county behind me, there ain't no stopping Martin. Look, let me give you a topic, an off-topic topic. So I have a lady, she's a good friend of mine, her name's Cheryl, and she went to, back in the 90s, early 90s, before when cannabis was still throwing you in jail. She went to Hollywood, she lived in Hollywood, and she went to the city and said, I want to create a cannabis smoking club, a gentleman's club, where we can smoke cannabis. And this is what we're going to do. And the county voted for them to do it, for her to have a county cannabis smoking club in the 90s. They call her the Martha Stewart of cannabis. She had a reason because she got jurisdiction inside of her county in order to open a private cannabis smoking club. And she is the longest cannabis business in America because of that. She was able to go in and get her county to give her sovereignty, to build sovereignty around her willingness to build this cannabis business. And when she did that, there was nothing nobody could do about it. Same thing in Louisville. Let's look at Louisville. In Louisville right now, if I get caught with an ounce of marijuana in my pocket, they passed the resolution in Louisville to make it the city folks made it so that
to have in your pocket.
Yeah, so they made it it's not like jaywalking. They were able to change, but if you do that in any other county, you're going to jail.
So they decided not to enforce it. They didn't change
because they have sovereignty to do so.
Right, because they have the sovereignty to enforce the law.
The state ain't coming in there and messing with you because you have an ounce of weed in your pocket.
Exactly. There you go. So let's do this real quick. Look, I'm
to enforce that. They didn't change the law. They just decided not to enforce it.
No, they changed the law. In the city, they changed the city ordinance that you can have a marijuana. That's a law. That's an ordinance. It's enforceable.
They didn't change the state law. They changed the city ordinance.
No, I'm changing the state law. I'm working on that right now as a sovereign individual, more powerful than the state.
So Okay, so we got that covered. Look, let's do this real quick. We're gonna go to commercial, and you guys can imagine this is what our text thread is like, except without our faces. But it's literally just like this. But we're getting ready to go to commercial. We'll be right back. Again, folks, this is the Truth Be Told show.
Hey folks, check out healthdaddywow.net. 100% plant-based herbs and supplements. Whether you're in person or online, use the word tipping for 10% off. Remember, feel better, look great, healthdaddywow.net. Remember, healthdaddywow.net.
Thank you, Truth Be Told, for allowing God's Lives Matter to be a sponsor. Wearable Products, as the purple t-shirt, is bearing witness every life created by God has infinite value. Visit God'sLivesMatter.com.
The History Untold 400 project is unlike any in America. This project does more than pay lip service to the 400 years since the first enslaved Africans were brought to our American shores. This project seeks to show the monumental accomplishments the descendants of American slaves have contributed to this great nation of ours. The History Untold 400 project seeks to promote a lifestyle of exclusivity for all foundational families of America. History Untold 400 project is the only movement that seeks to change the conversation and present a space that promotes an exclusive conversation for all American foundational families. And I believe in the power of the History Untold 400 project and the vision they have for all Americans.
The History Untold 400 project is a game changer for the American conversation around race, class, and ethnicity. This project is a movement that seeks to create a lifestyle of inclusivity of the American Foundational Family Network. The History Untold 400 project seeks to highlight the descendants of the American slaves and the vast contributions that have been made during the time span of 400 years. Join the movement, join the lifestyle, join the fan club, join the conversation.
When I first saw the term descendant of American slave, I didn't get it. I'm an African American. However, when I started thinking and learned more about the movement, I realized that I am one of the foundational families of America's greatness. I am a descendant of a slave. I am a true American.
History Untold 400 has a philosophy that as a movement, it gives you a sense of pride from within. The use of descendants of American slaves give me a sense of pride of who I am. Our ancestors came here from Africa and were born in America. Those that I'm descended from are strong. I am strong. I'm strong because of my ancestors. History Untold 400 is about that strength.
All right, folks, we are back. That was our unlearn to relearn moment right there with History Untold 400, or that was our History Untold 400 moment there. But nonetheless, folks, we're back continuing the conversation. And as we continue the conversation, then I want to showcase this real quick. This is concerning. Now, here's an article here that I looked up. Jane Roe recants rape claim. This is actually a Washington Post article that I believe is from like 1986. Yeah, this is a 1986 article here, which is interesting. But it talks about the woman whose case prompted the landmark Supreme Court decision legalizing abortion says she falsely claimed to have been raped in hopes of winning an exemption from Texas law banning the operation. The new account by Norma McCorvey, who was called Jane Roe in the 1973 abortion case Roe v. Wade, came during an interview with WUSA TV here. The station released a partial transcript last night. So let's play this because this is quite interesting. You know, this is a quick little video, but I want you guys to take a look at this, and then let's talk about this. I mean, we can't go back and change time, or can we? You know, I mean, should we be having this conversation? Maybe that's part of the conversation to be had.
Baby, who had been put up for adoption at birth, was 2 years old. Jane Roe's story was a terrible one. She said she had been gang raped, gotten pregnant, was desperate to get an abortion. That's what everyone believed, as long as Jane Roe remained anonymous. When she went public, she told a different story.
You were raped while you were in Georgia?
No, I wasn't.
You were not?
No, I wasn't.
So all those stories that are in the books and so forth are not true?
Yes, sir. Yes.
They're not true.
Right.
And it turned out that lying wasn't the only embarrassment this darling of the pro-choice forces presented. In her personal treatise published last year, Norma McCorvey told the story of her somewhat sordid life. Then she still adamantly supported abortion. Now she adds that to the list of sins she took with her into the baptismal pool.
I've cheated people out of money. I've sold drugs. I was an abusive alcoholic for many years. I've done a lot against his teachings. But I think the far greater sin that I did was to be the plaintiff in Roe versus Wade.
And we would encourage them to choose life, not death. Amen? Amen.
The man who brought Norma McCorvey to that view was the Reverend Flip Benham, a leader of the radical anti-abortion group Operation Rescue. He set up shop next door to the abortion clinic where Norma McCorvey worked and made enemies with her and then friends.
We want very much for her to be absolutely who God made her, not who we want her to be, not that we force ourselves on her, and she'll just be beautifully, supernaturally Norma.
Her long conversations with Benham turned into a religion.
All right. So we're sitting here having this 49-year conversation about something based on a lie, right? You know, this 49-year conversation gave women the right to choose, the ability to abort. And in recent years, you know, I can admit seeing it with women using it as a form of birth control, you know, and in some cases, or a lot of cases, a form of birth control that they didn't mean, because a lot of times, you know, after abortion surgery, things happen, and now the woman can't have children anymore. By her own doing, ultimately, right? You know, and I'm not saying that to say that the guy isn't at fault or this, that, and the other, because I can understand the position of a guy saying, hey, it's your choice. You know, I would rather you not, But then, you know, she goes and makes that choice, right? Nonetheless, we're here. So how do we look at it now? Life after Roe v. Wade. You know, finally the lie has been overturned. You know.
Well, that's the whole point. You know, I believe of what the court's saying. You know, I believe the court. We're mad at the court, but really, if you really were to bring the observation down to reality and say, okay, let's get my emotions and put them over here and see what the pieces are on the table. And I can see that the courts are basically saying, we ain't got this right. We haven't got it right from the beginning. We've been emotionally charged by the topic, and we've made decisions in the past. What do you do when you make emotionally charged decisions? You're most likely going to go back on those decisions and say, man, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done that. I would have done this. I could have done that. And I think the courts is basically, after reviewing the whole subject matter, has said, we have not jurisdiction over this. The states do. And when the states have reason why is because the people vote in their states. And because of that, they have the ability, if they don't want to kill babies in their state, they have the ability to the people have the ability to rise to that threshold and say, no, we're going to kill babies because we think it's good for society, or because it's a convenience of immorality, or
because pharmaceutical companies need more things to research on. You know, could be yet another reason. But why, you know, another thought to this is, good Lord, why does it take the dominant European culture so long to figure out that they should do otherwise than what they emotionally charged did before?
Bingo. Because it's political. It's always been political, and it's still political. Go back and look at the religious leaders of the time. Abortion was something America needed. When you go back and look at Falwell and see what he was saying, you go back and look at the politician, even Reagan, who signed the abortion bill in California as governor, the first one, landmark, and then when he wanted the nomination for the Republican Party for president, he had to backwalk that and say that he was, for life. And so it's been political from the beginning. It's two directions. Democrats went civil rights movement, and that was their platform. And the Republicans, if you go back and look at the political atmosphere, went towards abortion rights. And so these two planes are political. This is one of the reasons we haven't had over 49 years a good conversation, because anything political gets distorted, and it's now the court's decision to say, we're tired of the distortion. You, the people, go figure it out. Go figure it out in your state, and then it'll be figured out for you.
Maybe it's just that they're done with the medical research and experiments. Maybe behind closed doors, there's one governmental party that came to heads of pharmaceutical parties that said, are you done with the cloning research? Yes, sir, we're done. We have enough dead baby fetus cells, and we have collected enough to where we can make an army of 320 million copies of people that will do what we want.
Well, also contraceptive. I mean, look at how far contraceptives have gone in 40 years, 50 years. I mean, when you got a pill that you can take after you've had a date and had sex, and you could take a pill and it'll ensure you don't have a baby. So why do we need physical removal of the baby when we have options? And this just brings about the new options for killing babies.
Yeah, I mean, and I mean, that's a less invasive option, you don't gotta sit there and prop your legs up. You just pop a pill. People are used to popping pills now. Is this the same government that was established by European male figures who still haven't been able to stop raping the Negro woman and abort or sell off the offspring? It's a cultural curse in the United States of America. My grandfather, born in 1903, was the only mixed, quote unquote, mixed kid out of 5 because of the landowner raping my grandmother. Abortion would have aborted me before me. Absolutely. So
I can speak to that. I can speak to that big time. I mean, in my nation, the Native culture in our nation, rape was something that you found a Native woman, you raped her. Nobody cared.
I see your mind percolating there, Marcus. What's going on?
Well, I'm trying to figure out what that means.
Well, on what he's saying.
Because those two things aren't going together. They raped them. I guess this is after slavery, but abortion then was to control the population, to eliminate the minority population. And so I don't understand what he means there, that he wouldn't have been.
Well, I mean, were they doing abortions in 1910, 15, 20?
Well, I don't know, but according to him, it looks like they would have been.
Well, no, he's saying that abortion would have aborted him. If abortion were legal and okay, then he wouldn't be here, is what he's saying. So
same thing with me. My genetics that passed through that filter in history where there was nobody in the court saying anything about whatever you did to a slave, whatever you did to a Native American. Nobody was saying nothing about it. And so what he's saying is, if abortion had been available back then, a lot like me, I probably wouldn't be here today, because my grandmother had 18 kids, and not by the same guy, and had to come through tough times. I'd love to talk to you about some of the stories that she told, to my dad. And I can just tell you that it was America, like you say, has a filter of having bad morals. It's just what it. I mean, you can't even begin to run from that. Like, you can't hide behind, but we did this, but we did that. Yeah, but like this, a lie about being gang raped created an issue that we're all struggling over today. If the lie hadn't have been there, would the emotions have been there, and would the decision to say, hey, you know what, this belongs in the states, and never went to the Supreme Court because it wasn't their jurisdiction over the woman's body. That you're telling the Supreme Court you have jurisdiction over the woman's body to tell everybody in society what a woman can and cannot do with her body. No, they're saying in courts, we don't have that jurisdiction. You do.
Yeah.
I guess in that the lie is what created the emotion. So just like everything else, when it involves the descendants of American slaves, the state or the country reacts in a way that is emotional. They were protecting their women from having to deal with having a black baby, which is only emotion in that. Outside of that, what other emotion would be in it, right? So that part I get. The part that I have trouble with is that when a person now is able to go and file some type of charge against a person because they had an abortion, whether it was induced or not. It could
what would be the charge, Marcus?
Well, I don't know. It'd be murder. Is that what they do?
I don't think it rises that. She's not. The doctor would be the one performing the murder, and the courts have already said that she has sovereignty over her own body. She just has to fight for it in her own state, because the courts can't fight for that for them. They have to fight for it for themselves.
Okay, and so in Missouri, when I go to Oklahoma to have one, now they create some type of interstate commerce problem between Oklahoma and Missouri. And that
very well could.
Well,
and because the people of Missouri might say, hey, we don't want it to be the abortion capital of the world. We want to keep our sovereignty. If you want an abortion in our state, you have to be from our state. And so what if a girl comes across the state lines and gets an abortion? Who's liable for that, knowing that the sovereignty of the state exists? Well, that doctor would be for performing the abortion, and he would not be creating murder. He would just be what they call circumventing the law. He was circumventing the intent of the law.
But who is responsible for interstate commerce? If there's a dispute between interstate commerce, who settles those disputes?
Same thing. So let me just put it back to cannabis for you. So I can send my cannabis across state lines now because we have interstate commerce that has been codified federally in the law. But before that, when I was doing cannabis here in Kentucky, I had to figure out a route through states that would allow me to transfer the cannabis from Kentucky to other parts of the country. So I had to know the law. And I had to work with the sovereignty of that law, the holders of the law, which was the states that voters had said, yes, we can allow you to send your crop either to our state or through our state. So again, it's more about being involved in the law instead of trying to have the federal government be your granddaddy or your mama and tell you what you can and cannot do. That's what they're saying. We're not that. We're a court.
Yeah, high court. Who resolved disputes between states? If there's a dispute between interstate commerce.
Between states. Yes, that's how we fixed the law. Now, then we went and got the Farm Bill passed, which allowed us to have interstate commerce in the whole entire country. So now I can put my cannabis in a truck and drive it across the whole entire country because we created the ability for interstate commerce through law. Federal law, which the states adopt. But if a state said, Mr. Smith, we're pulling you over. I'm a state trooper. I'm pulling you over. I'm going to go through your truck. I found you got cannabis in your truck. I'm going to take you to jail. The federal government ain't going to all of a sudden just jump in there and take my case up and say, you can't take him to jail because they don't have jurisdiction.
But you will file an appeal and it'll get to the Supreme Court. If they
but it won't matter. It won't matter because I broke state law and the state police took me.
And that's the purpose for the interstate commerce. If
interstate commerce says we all agree and we will not allow our state to. That's what the union's all about. That's what the whole United States is all about. The united part in it.
That's right, and that's all I'm saying is that the interstate commerce, when there's disputes, is decided. The federal government will decide that dispute, and then that will become the law, just like you said about the Farm Bill.
Here, let me get to some of these comments real quick. Ambrose Lee says, abortion has been for many varied purposes, mostly selfish. Many slave owners created new slaves by impregnating their slave women. Many did not because their wives were pretty tough on them. That's an interesting way to create more employees. I hope we never go back to that. I know some independent Amazon owners that would create more drivers that way.
I think there would be more. I think there would be a lot of people, if they would look back in their history, would be the descendants of slave owners of our color because of that.
Oh yeah. I mean, Smith, Jones. We can go down that line right there. Let's see. Some states don't have a choice because 13 states put something in place to make sure abortion was illegal in their state as soon as Roe v. Wade was overturned. They put this in place 2019 in Kentucky. Remember, Marcus, we were talking about this just yesterday evening, how Kentucky went ahead and put that in place, as in case Roe v. Wade was overturned. Let's see, Leonard Walker.
Real quick, the one thing that they could have done back then, and when they passed that, was be as angry about it today. No, they said, Daddy, the federal government has our back, and they can't do this. They did. And you should have been upset then, and you should have stood up then.
Yeah, that's true. Leonard Walker, I believe the operative question that no one has asked is, with the exception of medical reasons or criminal reasons, how do we as a society create a culture where abortion is minimized to a point where it is not an option? I mean, but I
Yeah,
think
but
that's I think they've been working on that. Personally, I believe they've been working on that for many, many years. Just look at the ingredients in foods. You know, yellow number 5, it is tied to impotence in men. Polysorbate 80, that is tied to pregnancy issues and impotence in women, or sterilization in women. You know, the list goes on when you start looking at ingredients. Manufacturing companies have worked with the medical community behind closed doors to keep a revolving door going to each of them. And just the same, working with the government to try and ensure we keep this, you know, population to a minimum, but maybe it's just not working fast, or hard enough. So, you know, here we go with
it's the moral issue. It is 1000%. Look, here's how life begins. It's transmitted sexually. Period. There's no other format in which, other than man creating it in the womb through test tubing and all that. There's no other format.
Don't tell that to the people who would never believe that Zechariah was Jesus' biological father. But that's a whole nother conversation.
I'm just saying, life is sexually transmitted. That's the simplest thing as we can say. If you want to fix the abortion problem, where life begins, when it's at the sex. Quit having unprotected sex. Quit being manipulative with your body, manipulating either the system or, you know, keeping a man down that you don't like now because you know, relationships, Christians, 50% of Christian relationships marriages end up in divorce. So, I mean, even Christians in that same space. So, you know, if a relationship goes south, hold the baby over his head. And another thing, I think what Mr. Walker said a while ago is, where's the man's decision rights? Where does his rights begin? You know, if life begins is sexually transmitted, where does his rights begin to that life that was created with the both of them being, you know, equally involved?
Man, I don't know, because, you know, even when you look at that, you know, I don't know. I would say a lot of guys are thinking about the dollar bill, and probably keep their mouth shut more than anything else.
It's convenient. It's very convenient. Ain't it? Abortion's very convenient for if you're a scoundrel.
Yeah, because I mean, you got to say that it goes both ways. Leonard Walker, he says, I'm talking about the voluntary choice of the person. Lacrice Kidd says, guess we better start protesting now to protect same-sex marriage and civil rights. You can be quote-unquote protected and still get pregnant. Sorry, but rapists and molesters should not have a choice. And I wholeheartedly agree on that one there. And sorry about that, Marcus. Marcus had to go, and I did not notice our comments here, but I would like to exit you out properly there, sir. I know you got to be gone here a minute, but you know, with that being said, you know, my man Joseph Reed says, Martin, you're going to make me cancel my whole day and stay on here. You know, lovely conversation. But you know, with that being said, man, I mean, this is something that, you know, we seem to, you know, is it just a distraction? You know, it's just a distraction, you know, because right now, what are we, like 38? What I'm 38 something, is it billion or trillion in debt?
Oh yeah, $31 trillion in debt. Yeah,
$31 trillion in debt. This is the largest. And counting. This is the largest, you know, debt. Maybe this is one way to try to cut the debt down, and shut these abortion clinics down. Just getting federal funding here. You know, that saves a couple bucks right there. But that's a real issue. And
what about the 63 million? What about the 63 million Americans that would have been here being productive in our society? You know, and we think aborted people are like going to be, wow, good thing we got rid of them. I don't know. I think heaven's a pretty cool place, and that baby's probably doing some amazing things that he would in heaven that he would have done here on earth, or she would have done here on earth.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely there. Another point, nonetheless. But Chief Justice Roberts, like you said, Martin, he says Supreme Court went too far in taking the dramatic step, is what he called it, of overturning Roe v. Wade. And Joseph Reed says this is directly connected to the American GDP futures. So, you start looking at futures stock, then, again, we had a conversation Saturday about stocks and stuff like this. And that was one of the comments I made was I wonder how the Roe v. Wade, is connected to, or how it will affect the market nonetheless. Uncle Misha.
Well, the day the judgment came out, I texted my financial advisor and say, invest in anything with vasectomies. I think the women are going to demand now that, that's just, you're going to keep it, 100. I believe the men are going to have to step up and pony up. They're really in this whole thing. If you told a woman, nah, I just don't want to do that because we might end up in a bad situation. And, the choices may not be favorable in my favor. If the man could see that a relationship can go that way, which I don't know how they miss it because it's happening that way. I mean, you spoke earlier at the top of the hour of how many situations with people having babies just to have babies, and, having sex and knowing that, if anything happens, we'll get an abortion and it'll be all good. Nothing's to come of it. And so now that may be a challenge. Like I told my financial advisor, I said, look for me stocks that deals with vasectomies because I think women are going to want to deal with that situation more than have this, this argument to go for another 40 years or 50 years.
It's about the same price, the cost of the abortion versus a vasectomy for a guy, especially when you go to higher populated, bigger cities, because of competition and supply and demand, then the price is a lot less. So that same $500 to $700 in a lot of cases could get you that vasectomy, and now you just have to worry about STDs. So you had
to worry about those too all along.
Exactly. Yeah, you got to worry about those nonetheless. So it's one of those things, man, where this is obviously going to be a forever ending, a forever conversation, and again, it's something that I think in this day and age, we are a much more hypersexualized community. I'm sitting here looking at a report of a singer, a female artist, accused of appropriating, sexualizing, I don't know what HMONG culture with provocative outfit. But again, we're a hypersexualized community, and in this day and age, we, in America, and that was another thought too, because in other countries, in the UK, for instance, they seem to have a lower sex crime rate in some other countries. But when you look at advertising and things of that nature, sex is kind of everywhere, right? So kids grow up knowing about the body, knowing what's under the cloth, right? Whereas in America, everything is like such a faux pas. We keep it secret, so kids are always like, I wonder what's under there. I wonder what's behind there, and so that people might say could create a situation where you have someone, growing up and always wondering what's behind it. And so that could create the next rapist, that could create the next molester, you know, things of that nature. And it's just kind of like, you know, maybe we're doing this backwards. I don't know.
Well, so I look at these other countries and see how much divorce rate they have. See what their cultural, you know, families look like, and you see that they stay together longer. They keep their kids engaged in the family because they have to. One, because the culture is such that, you know, we'll raise you. You know, it ain't like the government of that country's done. We'll raise you and we'll tell you everything you need to know, and we'll do everything for you from the cradle to the grave. We're going to get you. We got you. They don't have countries that are doing that. They have families that do that. And a lot of that has to do with what's going on early on with the family in those situations. You know, I've seen it happen both ways. I've seen people be born like myself without a family around you because the two parents aren't, you know, staying together. It's just the way it was for me. But my stepmom come in and raised me. I never even knew I even had a regular mom. My dad never even told me I was somebody else until I was 21 years old, and I got a call from Red Cross while I was coming back from the Persian Gulf saying your mom's trying to get a hold of you, you know. And so, but I tell you one thing he did. He told me always this: son, you better make your words sweet to your mother, because you never know when I'm going to make you eat them. So he taught me real quick where the authority was in the family, and he taught me my respect for the woman, my wife, and now my mom. And he taught me how to be, provide for my family, knowing that hard work is what it takes to provide for a family. And that's why I say I think men's got it too easy now. Oh, let's go have an abortion, so they don't have to work hard with the moral obligation they have to raise that child. And so we put this all on the onus of the women in regards to, you know, it's a choice for them. But actually, I believe that it's a choice for both of them. And that's where we went wrong for too long. One of the ways we went wrong for too long.
Absolutely, Uncle Michon.
And if both sides knew it was a choice for both sides to make, then it would be probably a lot less likely that they'd get an abortion. If one side has to make the choice and society says it's okay for that choice to be made, then it's pretty easy to have sex wherever you want.
Absolutely. Welfare made having a lot of babies popular to populate the public schools and prisons, which led to the unempathetic, privileged Caucasian wanted to be a school teacher, which led to the student to prison pipeline. I was a witness in the 80s and 90s to these behaviors firsthand. And with that being said, I'm going to segue to a video as we end the show of Crazy Bone, who exposes a secret meeting in the music industry that has a lot to do with the end result of what we're talking about here with abortion and this hyper-sexualized, hyper-criminalized community that we have here in America. And we'll close the show out to that. So with that being said, Brother Martin Smith, appreciate you. You can stay on in the backstage there and watch this as we go. Thank you for stepping in and jumping up here real quick. One last word before you go.
One last word before I go. Men, keep it buttoned up. Leave it alone until God tells you to.
There you go. All right, then. Again, this has been another episode of the Truth Be Told show. We're going to go out with this video here. I want you guys to see this. This is a lot of what has led to this whole thing here. And I want you guys to, you can comment on this just the same. Again, this has been another episode of the Truth Be Told show. Oh, damn.
So it says, hello. That changed rap music and destroyed. More than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991. which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making my story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I've simply decided to leave out the names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were, like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for.
Damn.
Hold on, let me
So we gonna tell a story.
We gonna tell the story. We ain't scared.
You know what I'm saying? What they gonna do?
They after us, not just playing.
Look, that black van.
So look, so he says between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you may call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came to Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then, since technology and media weren't accessible to people like that, like they are today. The industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted.
Right.
This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Rap music's new direction.
Yeah.
Little did I know we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practices ever seen. So this was the meeting. The meeting was held at a private residence on the I remember about 25 to 30 people were being there.
Right.
Most of them familiar faces.
So in 1988, he founded that, and this isn't
the secret meeting that changed rap music and destroyed a generation.
Damn.
So it says, hello. After more than 20 years, I finally decided to tell the world what I witnessed in 1991, which I believe was one of the biggest turning points in popular music and ultimately American society. I have struggled for a long time weighing the pros and cons of making my story public, as I was reluctant to implicate the individuals who were present that day. So I've simply decided to leave out the names and all the details that may risk my personal well-being and that of those who were, like me, dragged into something they weren't ready for.
Damn.
Hold on, let me
So we gonna tell a story.
We gonna tell a story. We ain't scared.
You know what I'm saying? What they gonna do?
They after us, not just playing.
Look, that black van.
So look, so he says between the late 80s and early 90s, I was what you may call a decision maker with one of the more established companies in the music industry. I came to Europe in the early 80s and quickly established myself in the business. The industry was different back then, since technology and media weren't accessible to people like that, like they are today. The industry had more control over the public and had the means to influence them any way it wanted.
Right.
This may explain why in early 1991, I was invited to attend a closed-door meeting with a small group of business insiders to discuss rap music's new direction. Rap music's new direction.
Yeah.
Little did I know we would be asked to participate in one of the most unethical and destructive business practices ever seen.
Crazy.
So this was the meeting. The meeting was held at a private residence on the outskirts of Los Angeles. I remember about 25 to 30 people were being there.
Right.
Most of them familiar faces. Speaking of those I knew, we joked about the theme of the meeting, as many of us did not care for rap and failed to see the purpose of being invited to a private meeting to discuss the future of hip hop.
Talk to them.
Among the attendees was a small group of unfamiliar faces who stayed to themselves and made no attempt to socialize beyond their circle. Based on their behavior and formal appearances, they didn't seem to be from our industry. Our casual chatter was interrupted when we were asked to sign the confidentiality agreement, preventing us from publicly discussing the information presented during the meeting. Needless to say, this intrigued, in some cases, disturbed many of us. The agreement was only a page long, but very clear on matters and consequences, which stated that violating the terms would result in job termination immediately. We asked several people what this meeting was about and the reason for such secrecy, but could not find anyone who had the answers for us. A few people refused to sign and walked out. Nobody stopped them. I was tempted to follow, but curiosity got the best of me.
That's right.
A man who was part of the unfamiliar group collected all the agreements from us. So now it's going to get to the good part because the meeting about to start.
Talk to him, Jake.
It says, quickly after the meeting began, hold on one second.
Get your popcorn, y'all.
Popcorn, get your pistol. No,
for real though.
Quickly after this meeting began, one of the industry colleagues, who shall remain nameless like everybody else, thanked us for attending. He then gave the floor to a man who only introduced himself by first name and gave no other details about his personal background. I think he was the owner of the residence, but that was never confirmed. He briefly praised all of us for the success we had achieved in our industries and congratulated us for being selected as part of this small group of decision makers. At this point, I began to feel slightly uncomfortable in the strangeness of this gathering. The subject quickly changed as the speaker went on to tell us that the respective companies we represented had invested in a very profitable industry.